Will Chip Kelly fix Ohio State's run game?
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Buckeye fans, to a Thursday edition of Locked On Buckeyes here on Thursday, May 30th in the year 2024. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens podcast, and I'd like to thank you for making Locked On Buckeyes your first listen every day. Joining us for today's show, it's my guy, it's our guy, Mo Murphy of the Off the Ball Network, of the Believe Network, and Mo's a frequent contributor of this podcast, and I say all the time, Mo and even Jeff will be here all offseason long, giving you the Buckeye fix we all desire. And the question of the day is, will Chip Kelly fix Ohio State's run game? Before we turn it over to Mo, that question's been on my mind a lot because I see a lot of people talking about it and wondering and saying, oh, Chip Kelly will not. I think the biggest factor for Ohio State's running game is not Chip Kelly coming in, but the running back staying healthy. And if the running back stay healthy, the desire to fix the run game wouldn't be there, because even with the issues, it wouldn't be as broke as it currently is.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I feel like Chip Kelly was kind of brought in to fix the run game, but like, how much was the run game damaged? Like, was it the lack of offensive line talent and how good we were being able to, because usually our best run games have been when we've been able to just kind of bully our opponents.
Yeah.
Haven't necessarily been able to do that the past couple of years. So I think there's been a setback in how good our offensive line is. But I think like Chip Kelly, he hasn't had the world's best offensive lines in UCLA or Oregon, wherever he coached, but he still was able to make do. And that's one thing that's important to the success of his offense, is like he is like a pass heavy coordinator, but he does everything off the run. And so if we can't run the ball, then I would assume like if we are going to be running Chip Kelly's offense, it's not going to work to perfection. So I've wondered that same question, like, will he fix the run game, and how important is it to fix the run game in order to run Chip Kelly's offense to perfection? But are we running Chip Kelly's offense is also probably another question that people are wondering. And amidst all this, is it Ryan Day's offense or is it Chip Kelly's offense?
You know, the running game to me over the past couple of years, or really since Ryan Day's taken over as Ohio State's head coach, you got that 1 year and J.K. Dobbins had over 2,000 rushing yards in 2019. You've had one running back since that time period have over 1,000 yard rushing in a season. That's TreVeyon Henderson in 2021. He played all 13 games. Outside of that, you only had one running back in the other seasons that played every game. That was Trey Sermon, played 8 of 8 in 2020 and had 870 rushing yards. He didn't really get into a groove until later in the year. If he was in that late season groove at week 1, he would have had a 1,000 yard season. But then the past couple years where things really got a little dicey, as Mo mentioned, the offensive line, Mo, I agree with you. The offensive line definitely needs some work. But the production in the running game, even with those guys not playing to the standard that has been set at Ohio State, it's injuries, man. Like, Chip Kelly's going to come in, the running game's going to get better. I think it's an easy statement to make. But you got Mayan Williams and TreVeyon Henderson easily the past couple years battling injuries the entire season almost. And Mayan Williams ended his Buckeye career season last year a little bit early due to injury. And those guys don't get hurt, even with the poor running game or less than stellar offensive line play. The running backs will look a whole lot better, but they just been hurt the past couple years.
Yeah, I mean, injuries have definitely been the biggest key to Ohio State's offense at the running back position. And then looking at the fact that we got TreVeyon Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, like, I mean, good Lord, if that tandem stays healthy, if that tandem stays healthy, are we even worried about whether Chip Kelly can fix the run game? It should fix itself by having two of the most talented running backs on the roster, period. Like, this tandem of running backs might be the best duo in college football. And it might not be arguable. Now, both of them might not be individually the hands down best running back in college football. I think that goes to the guy, Ollie Gordon in Oklahoma State, as far as individually. But this running back room and as a duo, I mean, it should fix itself just by having these two talents. And as long as they can stay healthy, Chip Kelly can't help if TreVeyon Henderson has a foot issue again. He can't help if ankle. You can't help injuries as a coach. Like, that is not necessarily your job. So if they can stay healthy, though, And Chip Kelly knows, like, to unlock his offense, the run game has to be potent. Well, I think it should be pretty easy to do with Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, because even if the offensive line isn't up to par for Ohio State, our Buckeye standards, this offensive line is still going to be better than probably 90% of college football, and they're probably going to be able to bully 90% of defensive lines they face. What matters is, can Chip Kelly fix for us to be prepared for that 10%? Because that other 10% is running to a championship. Like, we know we can beat the Marylands and this and that. Can we beat Oregon? Can we beat the Michigans? And are we ready in the playoffs for the USCs and the Alabamas and the Oklahomas, Texases? Like, that 10%. Can you fix us to be prepared for that 10%? I think it should be. I feel like it's so easy to ask Chip Kelly to fix the run game as long as they're healthy. Like, I do think that's an easy ask of him as long as they're healthy. But if they get hurt, I don't even know how deep we are at the running back position anymore if they get hurt. Like, I'm not sure how much deeper we are than those two.
Honestly, so I'll go through it really quickly. You got Judkins, you got Henderson, the top two guys. Mm-hmm. Outside of that, you got, I think the next most experienced guy is a walk-on. TC Coffey, I think he's played 2 games, 66 rushing yards. I literally looked this up like a week ago. Right. Scored 1 touchdown. And that was a couple of years ago because he got hurt last year. Outside of him, the next 2 guys are true freshmen, Mo. They just got on campus.
Yeah, we lost our depth basically getting Judkins, Henderson coming back, any possible depth at running back, Mayan Williams going to the NFL, and then anybody that would have stayed and, Chip Trainum, like, he's gone. Like, everybody's gone.
That's a big loss, bro. So, that's a huge loss.
Is it, though? Like, is it a huge loss if we have Henderson and Judkins? Like, if that's the 1-2 punch that we're going with, I'm not sure anybody behind that. And I love Chip Trainum, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, I got you.
I think if Judkins didn't come and we lost him, then yes, it would be a huge loss. But I think he would have been, between him and Dallin Hayden. Dallin Hayden's a loss too, but we have Judkins, we have Henderson, so I'm not sure. Like, I'm assuming, I think Dallin Hayden would have stayed a Buckeye if Judkins didn't come to Ohio State. I don't think Ohio State is necessarily too concerned about the depth after those two, but you have to hope that they both are fairly healthy for most of the season, or else that depth start to get in question. But I'm never opposed to, if only one of them gets hurt and you have a true freshman who's the second running back, who's RB2 in an offensive system. These guys are at Ohio State. They got scholarships from Ohio State. They committed to Ohio State and they're signed to Ohio State. So they are at least pretty good at running back. At the very least, we are getting pretty good guys that are on campus, new guys on campus right now. So the depth isn't there as far as what we've seen in production at the college level. But with these 2 and then 2 freshmen that you handpicked and they committed to Ohio State, you should feel comfortable that you're 4 deep with guys that you wanted in this offense at the running back position. So injuries, unless both of these guys get hurt, a knick-knack here or there, and they might have to miss a game or 2 here or there, shouldn't do too much damage, but you never know.
As Mo's talking about the running back depth, a question entered my mind that I want to ask Mo. We'll do it after the break. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to the tip-off. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. Gametime makes it so easy. NBA tickets, Major League Baseball tickets, NBA Finals, big events like that, it does not matter. Go to Gametime. If you have a last-minute decision on if you want to go to the game or not, and you guys decide to go, you and your boys, make that trip to Gametime. Utilize all of their features that make your ticket buying experience quick, fast, and more inexpensive than you thought it would be. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Mo, I've been thinking about the running back rotation quite a bit, not just leading up to the show, but really all offseason, trying to figure out what Chip Kelly and Ryan Day will put together in their lab that we'll see on Saturdays in the fall. A 2-back rotation or a 3-back rotation. in my head, it's almost easy to say go with a 2 running back rotation. You're going to play 3 when you're playing these cupcakes. Trust me. You know, like you're going to try to utilize the wear and tear and save the bodies of Judkins and Henderson and play some of the guys that won't play against Oregon, guys that won't play against Penn State and Michigan and some of those tougher opponents on Ohio State's schedule. I know Georgia sometimes uses a 3-back rotation, and they do it very well. A lot of people at Ohio State fans will say use a 3-back rotation and use a true freshman. I would be very nervous about that. Because when you got these 2 guys in Judkins and Henderson that are clearly, as long as they stay healthy and their careers don't have to be ended due to injury, both of these guys, Mo, are future NFL running backs. So a 2-back system with these 2 guys specifically, it works. I would not go for a 3-back system with these 2 guys running the ship in the fall.
I'm all for a 3 or 4-back system early on if we have to. Like you said, these guys are NFL guys. They're thinking about that. They know. Like, Travion Henderson could have went in probably the 2nd or 3rd round this year had he entered the NFL. So they know, like, what they gave up by coming back. Travion Henderson knows that. Now, Judkins is going to be drafted. He wasn't draft eligible. He decided to go to Ohio State. But the thing is, though, Henderson came back to try and win a championship.
Yeah.
Are you about stats and raising your draft stock? Because you're going to play and you're going to have the opportunities in the games that matter. But early on when we play I think like Western or Central Michigan, Akron, and like Toledo on our schedule, like, man, let those true freshmen get some reps because Travion Henderson does get banged up each year. He does have an injury that he may miss a game, or it may be better for him to miss a game. And you got a guy who's got some reputation, like he's got some reps in a true freshman. So if you got to use both of them early on and you try not to use Travion Henderson and Judkins much leading into the second half of those blowouts, I'm not opposed to that. There doesn't have to be a system of we're going to run these 2 into the ground to try and win the championship. Henderson came back and you brought in Judkins because you felt like that was the best option to win a national championship this year. And so you're not running them thinking about September and middle of October. You're thinking about November, December, and January. And so if we see 5 running backs in one game in a blowout or whatever it is, I'm not as opposed to it. If we sit them after the first half for the first 3 weeks, running backs are a lot different when it comes to game time reps. Like you do want them to get reps, but at the same time, they take a lot different wear and tear on their legs. So like as much as you could save them and keep them fresh, if you got to use 5 running backs in a blowout, who cares? If you got to use your 2 and they sit in the second half, like I'm not opposed to rolling out 3, rolling out 4, rotating them. And if they get going, like you want to do a 2-back system to keep them going, like momentum. Zeke was a guy, he won't do much for his first 3 carries, but carry 4 and 5 is where he really gets going. And that's where he starts busting out 10 yards, 20 yards the next carry, 15 yards here. So yes, these running backs do got to get in the rhythm, but like these 2 have to understand the bigger picture. Like we need you for November, December, January. We're trying to win a national championship. So I do think the backup running backs, the running back 3, 4, and 5 will get plenty of opportunity early on because we're going to need that for late in the season.
So what do you think about when Ohio State, because they got to go to Oregon this year, they got to go to Penn State, Michigan comes to Ohio State. Easily the 3 toughest games on the schedule, and the rest of the schedule really isn't that tough. It's really one of the easier Ohio State schedules I've seen lately over the past, 10 years. When you play those 3 big-time opponents where you know the defenses are going to be very, very physical, you know you have to bring your A game to beat all 3 of those opponents, would you go with a 2-back system or a 3-back system?
2. Like those 3 games specifically are set. Like my best players are playing, period. Like, and if you got to get run to the ground, if we have to run for 400 yards to win that game against Oregon, so be it. Like that's the stump in the roads. Everything isn't going to be easy. You can't play Henderson and Judkins for the first half every game and hope that we blow everybody out. That's not the case. But there are 3 games on the schedule that you feel like could push you to the brink of close to defeat, and we have to pull out everything. And 2-back system. And those 2, maybe 3 if their legs start to get a little tired. But in the big games, it's Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins. Like you didn't have Travion Henderson come back and you didn't get Quinshon Judkins to transfer for Ole Miss to really do anything other than a 2-back system between them 2. And they really had to come to terms with the fact that they'll be able to figure it out. And neither one of them are going to be the main feature back. So trying to throw a 3rd in a rotation, especially in these big games, because like I said, Travion Henderson coming back, even if he's remotely worried about his draft stock, Michigan, Penn State, and Oregon. Those type of games when you play elite can raise your draft stock. Scouts and stuff understand what schools are doing with you as far as if you don't run for 2,000 yards, you're not a good running back. When they watch, they understand, they talk, they see what's going on. So TreVeyon Henderson does not have to run for 1,800 yards for his draft stock to improve. He just has to play great in those major games. And so I'm going two-back system against Oregon, against Penn State, and against Michigan. That's the plan entering the game. Like, you two we might run you to the ground. Like, granted, we're going to throw the ball and all that too. So we should never be in a scenario where we're running our running backs to the ground. I don't see a pass defense that we played is good enough to force us to do that. But at the same time, like, if it calls for that in those 3 games, if y'all really want to win the championship, you got to do your part too. And so if that's what Chip Kelly needs as a player, that's what you got to do. So yeah, I'm going two-back system.
Yeah, I'm with you. It has to be a two-back system. One thing that what's been on my mind lately when we do recruiting stuff on here, when looking at high school guys that Ohio State's currently recruiting, one of the things you know right away that when they get to campus, it's not just Ohio State, wherever they go play college football, bro, they got to work on their pass blocking because pass protection for a running back in college is so difficult, which is why I think Dallin Hayden as a freshman did not play as much as people thought he should have. I for one, wanted him to play a whole lot more than he did, especially with the injuries at Ohio State. But pass protection is very, very, very difficult. And so if you have a two-back system and your top 2 guys are Judkins, a former SEC freshman of the year, you got Henderson, former 1,200-yard rusher his freshman year at Ohio State, and then your other guys that are on the roster really haven't really played that much football. In those big games, if they get on the field and it's a passing situation and the opposing defensive coordinator sees that, he's like, oh, y'all doing that? I got a blitz for you, and y'all can't stop it. And over, they're going to run that same blitz to mess up the mind of a young running back that can't pass protect. And so that's one reason there, but you said it so well, and I kind of agree with everything you said. The two-back system in those games, it's going to work out so well. And now the tricky part for me, Mo, with that two-back system is how Chip Kelly figures out the rotation. Because to me, it's not saying, hey, let's say Henderson starts, but Judkins is having the better game that day against Oregon, roll with Judkins. Let's say Henderson starts against Penn State, and Henderson is the hot guy that day, roll with Henderson. I don't want it to be like an even trade where both guys get 10 carries a game. You got to roll with the hot hand, because if you don't roll with the hot hand, it could kill momentum, and really the Buckeyes could leave Oregon with a loss, which nobody wants that.
You want me to be honest? I think they're going to do something really a lot different than as opposed to what you're used to seeing. TreVeyon Henderson is a really good receiving back as well. He could catch out of the backfield, and when he gets in open space, him and Judkins are dangerous in open space, one-on-one against a linebacker having to make that big play. I think we're so used to the RPO, one running back, I think we're going to have 2 running backs back there in shotgun. I think there's going to be a point in time, and you're going to have an RPO with a running back screen option, or like a running back headed to the flat for a safety valve, but your safety valve is TreVeyon Henderson or Quinshon Judkins, while also being able to run the RPO with the option of the defensive end has to play it whether I'm going to hand it or keep it. But then I got another elite explosive running back in the flat. So you have to play that while also having to guard my wide receivers. And I've seen Chip Kelly do it at UCLA, even with DTR and Zach Charbonnet. They had another running back. They would put 2 running backs back there. And Charbonnet was more their down the middle, get the rough yards. But they had a finesse back there that they would put back there in pass catcher situations. But the threat of Charbonnet was still there. So I could see Chip Kelly. We're not used to it. It's more the old school type of way of running, shotgun formations now, putting 2 running backs back there. But I think just to make sure they stay on the field, even in rotation, and they're not left out, and there's always that opportunity of being able to get one of them the ball, I think I don't want to roll with who has the hot hand necessarily, because that starts to be like, well, if Henderson had it last game, what makes you think we shouldn't continue next game? So now you leave Judkins out of it. And then when Henderson has a bad game, well, we should have went with Judkins. So then Judkins goes, and he goes crazy the next game. But then why are we going back to Henderson the game after that? It's kind of the thing you would be afraid would happen with your quarterback. You got to pick a quarterback, stick with him, and roll with it. So you got to pick, like, are they going to split-ish carries? If you're the better running back, maybe you carry it 15 to 16 times, and the other one carries it 10 to 12. I think we're going to run the ball 25 to 30 times. So we're going to leave it 12 and a half to 15 carries a piece, give or take. depending on who the better running back is, you'll still be on that field. And maybe Travion Henderson has 8 rushes, but 4 pass catches at the backfield. So he has 12 touches. Like, there's so many ways that you could get these guys the ball. I think there's just going to be a point, just have them on the field. Like, as long as you have them on the field back there, and there's a lot you could do with the RPO when you got Travion Henderson and Junkins back there and you send one of them in the flat. Just the threat off the flat takes a defensive end and his focus out of even trying to go after the quarterback because he knows, or it takes an outside linebacker in a blitz. Like, that stops a lot of what you would say with teams blitzing. Yeah. That prevents a lot of blitzes because you can't all out blitz when I know I got Travion Henderson or Junkins. As soon as they get the ball in the flat and they just go straight, it's a touchdown. They're gone. They're that fast. They're that elusive. You leave them one-on-one with a linebacker, they're cutting inside and they're headed to the pylon. Like, so there are a lot of ways that they could counter that. And I think putting 2 running backs on the field will be that, especially if Will Howard is our starting quarterback. I think he plays a factor into this too, because he's a big body that can run. So you got Junkins, Henderson, and then you have a RPO option with Will Howard where he can run and make some plays with his legs too. Takes all the pressure off those guys, and you keep one in the flat. Like, that's just one simple play that you can always revert to and it'll go back to, and it probably should work. Like, it should work almost every time. It should be some type of positive yards every time you run it, unless you find some defensive mastermind that can stop it. But there's so many things going on, and we're only talking about what's happening in the backfield between the running backs and quarterback. We're not even talking about what the 5-star receivers and Emeka Ibuka and them doing over there. We're preparing solely for the backfield. So I think that's a possibility, is having those 2 on the field at most of the time when you do the 2-back system as well.
Mo mentioned Will Howard. He also said, speaking of what's going on in the backfield, and coming up next, Mo and I are going to revisit a conversation we had previously on the show about the Buckeyes quarterbacks. It's coming up next. All right, Mo. I have not talked to you about quarterbacks on here in a while. If we have, I mean, it happens, but I am on the record. You're on the record. We both have said who we think the starting quarterback is going to be. Unless your mind has changed. I know you said saying. I don't think that's changed, has it?
Yeah, my mind's changed who I think it'll be. Like, who I think it should be, I still think it should be saying, but I think it'll be Will Howard.
So I think it should be Will Howard, not saying. Mm-hmm. But I do think when it comes to these 2 guys at quarterback, you see something with saying that Will Howard doesn't provide. I see something in Howard that saying doesn't provide. And it makes me wonder, which I hope does not happen, but what if Chip Kelly wants to roll this quarterback competition into the regular season like what we saw last year, with these 2 guys being the front runners to be starting quarterbacks? One's a seasoned vet. One just got to Ohio State. That'll be a really intense battle, because with the guys in the backfield and these guys on the outside, if they just can get out there and let that ball spin, man, it could be really intense early in the season for those quarterbacks.
I think you made the mistake last year. Like, I think they made the mistake last year, letting this leak over into the regular season. Yeah. Like, if you pick Will Howard, that's not saying that his job's fully secure.
Correct.
But in games that he plays, like, he shouldn't come out in the middle of the first quarter for a package set for saying. Like, no, if Howard's going to be the starting quarterback, he's going to start. Saying ain't going to play until the backups come in. Right. Like, that's how you do it. And if he ain't playing good, like, we're not losing our first 3 weeks. I can promise you that.
No, not at all.
Will Howard going to play great, should play great. It should look decent. And then you evaluate after that. You look at what Julian Sand looks like in the 4th quarter. No real evaluation there, because by then it's a blowout. The other team might have some of their backups in, and if you're already blowing out a team, they backups is going to be worse. They don't have a bunch of 5-stars sitting behind them. They don't have a 5-star quarterback stepping in to play an entire quarter. But yeah, I think Will Howard will be the starter. I don't think you should have the competition. But if there's a tick of like, man, Will Howard's not doing it, and some things we've seen in the 4th quarter, how about in week 3, we change some things up a little bit? We're not starting Sand, but we'll let Sand play the second half. We're trying to see something before we hit the brute of our schedule that actually matters, before we start playing conference play. I could really see that playing out, but that's if Will Howard doesn't play up to par. I think he's the safer option. He's the big body. He's the experienced vet. He's won some games. He's won a Big 12 title at Kansas State. Like, this dude isn't a bum. He could play, like, and he's won a lot of games in college. So I think he's a safe option. And if you are going to play it safe, then you have to maximize. Even if you think there's more talent to be unlocked with this offense, if you go the other way, if you play it safe and pick Will Howard, you have to maximize this offense and make it look great for the simple fact everybody knows this is expected to be the best, if not one of the best offenses in the country. And if you come out looking as bad as you did the first 3 weeks offensively, like you did with Kyle McCord, with Julian saying and Aaron Nolan sitting back there that we're just sure has to be better, I think you would have a conversation, but I don't think this will flow into the regular season much. I think once they pick their starter, I think Ryan Day knows, and he'll explain to Chip Kelly too, whoever we pick, no matter who it is, this can't roll into the regular season. This has to be our solidified starter entering camp, or whether they want it. Coming out of camp, you have to know who the starting quarterback is going to be week 1, and you have to expect as an Ohio State fan or whatever it is, that whoever is week 1, we need this guy for all 12 weeks. He will be the starting quarterback in week 13. He'll be the starting quarterback in the Big Ten championship. And he'll be the starting quarterback in the playoffs trying to win a national championship. And so if it is Will Howard, I think he's the safe option. And if it is, I think he'll remain the starter. I think there's some things that you can unlock, but Will Howard's not a bum enough for me to just call for his number because he didn't go for 400 yards one day. Right. I don't think he's better, more talented than Sam, but I think he's ready to start right now for Ohio State and what the expectations are. I think he's more ready to handle those type of expectations and start than Julian Sayin is. But if you started Sayin right away, I think by week 4 or week 5, you'd be like, Julian Sayin is the better quarterback, but you don't have time to kind of play with those odds. That's the thing. You don't have time to play with those odds. You brought a lot of guys back. The expectation really is to win the national championship. Let's be honest. Like, this is national championship or bust almost. It seems like the atmosphere around the Buckeyes, period. This recruiting class feels it. Ryan Day is and it's not about Ryan Day's job. It's just this team is so talented. We've been so close. We're right there. We on the cusp. We've gotten everything we needed. It seems like national championship or bust. So you can't have no problems with we can't even be talking about quarterback battles during the regular season. Whoever you pick outside of injury, you got to know, and you got to stick with your guns. And don't step back and say you were wrong in the middle of the season. Like, that's the wrong time to make a quarterback change. If you're going to do it early.
You know, Mo, one thing I don't want to see is this is not a knock on Devin Brown. Devin Brown is just doing what he's being asked to do. But I was not a big fan of rolling out a quarterback out there in obvious run situations and running the ball with the quarterback when you have guys at running back that are there to run the ball. It didn't make any sense to me. And it's not why he got hurt, like injuries happen on the field like we talked about earlier. But he's just not built for that. He is a quarterback for a reason. Now, you say he can run a little bit. I haven't seen any crazy athleticism out of him to make him think he's a better runner of the football than, say, Mayan Williams or Travion Henderson or the guys that Ohio State recruited to simply run the ball. Mo, I'm not a fan of the competition going into the regular season. Honestly, I prefer for them to have this thing in-house already settled right now as we speak. I don't want it to go into fall camp because I feel like that's just bringing on more drama that Ohio State doesn't need right now. You say national championship or bust, that's the narrative inside the practice facility. And so that's one thing that I think don't just talk about it, be about it. And this, I do also think they're going to go with the safe option at quarterback because if they don't, Ryan Day could be out of a job. But not only that, with the quarterback competition, like, make a decision, but don't roll out these QB packages for short yardage just to do it. Make it make sense, because last year it didn't make sense to me.
No, it didn't. And like, my thing was, like, you never had Devin Brown throw the ball in those scenarios. Like,
no.
I get bringing him out there for the threat of throwing the ball, but like every once in a while, you got to have him throw the ball, or the threat is like, well, a defense, and maybe you think you can trick a defense one time, but you never put yourself, like, you didn't put Devin Brown on your 20-yard line with 80 yards to go and think like, oh, they think we're going to run the ball with Devin Brown. This is where we get him for a big play touchdown. Like, you were doing it in short yardage situations where you could have just handed it to your better runner, which would have been your running back. So if you are going to have packages like that, at some point in time, you got to throw the ball. Like, you have to let the quarterback remain a threat as a quarterback. I don't think Devin Brown is a threat as a running back, but he is as a quarterback that can run. Yeah. So if you're going to have him out there, even if he comes in for Will Howard because he's the older guy and you have a package for him, some of those plays, you have to be okay with him throwing the ball, or else the package is pointless. If he's not a threat, then the quarterback being out there running the ball is pointless. So you have to let him throw the ball. I'm not opposed to those, but if you are going to call them, let Devin Brown throw the ball. They never even looked like they were. And I think the one time he did throw the ball at one, I remember he threw an interception or almost. It was an almost interception, but it was almost like he wasn't even supposed to throw it. Like the coach almost said, don't throw it. So if you're going to send Devin Brown out there, send him to have some type of success and let him play his position. If you're going to have me do this RPO, but I can run and I'm dangerous with my legs, at least give me some type of option to be able to throw the ball, or else this package, like you said, the package is pointless. It doesn't work if my arm isn't a threat and if the defense doesn't think I'm going to throw the ball, because obviously I'm just taking it. He wouldn't even stand up in the pocket. He wouldn't fake a run and then stand up in the pocket and then go like a quarterback draw. That man's sitting there, take it up. Nope, not to the running back, duck and try and run. Like, that is a pointless package. I 100% agree with you, but I wouldn't be opposed to seeing Devin Brown in those packages if you let him throw the ball, because that brings another threat to the offense. And if Devin Brown is in the quarterback competition, then that means he's somewhat decent enough in the coach's eyes that he should be able to execute a couple plays throughout games important and be able to swing some momentum offensively. So I won't be opposed to seeing it, but don't set him up for failure and just he automatically has to run the ball. Let the man throw the ball or stop calling. Leave him on the sideline if you ain't going to let him throw the ball.
I love having Mo on the show. He'll be back on down the road. That is Mo Murphy of the Off the Ball Network, of the Believe Network. Just started hosting Believe in Mavs, doing a phenomenal job with that. I am your host, Jay Stevens. This has been Locked on Buckeyes here on a Thursday. You can send every single email to jstevens317@gmail.com. Love having Mo on the show. Love being here with you. We got one more show left this week, and it's the final show before the first official visit window for Ohio State recruiting. Trust me, you don't want to miss tomorrow's show.